The Eagles' offseason is starting to get crazy, as they just got some shocking twists that nobody saw coming, and that includes a brand new report on the Myles Garrett situation, as one NFL insider thinks that there's a strong chance that he ends up in Philly. But is this actually true, and what could it mean for the rest of the team? Meanwhile, Josh Sweat just hinted at re-signing with the Eagles, despite all the reports saying that he's likely a goner, plus Philly just hired their new quarterback coach, and why could the Birds' moves during the NFL Combine reveal their huge future plans for Dallas Goedert and Jordan Davis? Well, let's talk about that and all the other crazy recent Eagles news starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Philly Fan 21 channel. If you're new, I'm Evan and I cover all things Philadelphia Eagles, and the NFL Combine is continuing to roll on, as with the much anticipated Combine drill starting yesterday, NFL teams, including of course the Eagles, started to get their first real look at some of their top draft targets and prospects getting in some on-field work. And also, with the Birds obviously continuing to meet with players at the Combine, there's been plenty of news, rumors, and developments coming out over these past couple of days of who the Eagles might want to potentially add when the draft rolls around in April. And while obviously that's all very compelling and there's a lot to get to regarding that, let's start off on a bit of a lighter note, as A.J. Brown just released these videos of the Eagles playing basketball down in New Orleans, I'm guessing before the Super Bowl, and it's pretty hilarious because none of them looked very good.
Check him out, man. Oh, he's cool. He airball. Round two. Man, that 2K ass move. I'll blow by him.
You know what's sad is I saw someone in the comments say, if you told me these were the Philadelphia 76ers, I would 100% believe you. So that should tell you everything you need to know about how the Sixers are doing this season. But getting back to the video itself, I mean, I just love stuff like this because, again, it just shows you the chemistry and the bond that this team has with each other. And it's one of the reasons they had the year they just had. Oh, and also another reason for that is just the insane work ethic of this team. I mean, think about it. These Eagles just won the Super Bowl, what, 2.5, 3 weeks ago? And a lot of them are already back out there working hard in preparation for what they hope is another great season next year. I mean, let's start off with Braden Mann of all people, the punter. As you can see him here in this video released by his wife Kylie Mann, probably on some tropical island somewhere on vacation, yet he's still working on his craft, specifically catching these snaps and practicing PAT and field goal holds. And then you also got safety Sidney Brown, who released this video to his Instagram story, and as you can see, he's already back in the lab, out on the field in bare feet, you know, doing some cone drills, just running around out there, and again, just working on his craft and trying to get better in preparation for what he hopes is his best season yet. And Sidney Brown's an interesting guy because, you know, obviously he's not somebody who played a huge role for this team last year. He was mainly just a special teamer, and he occasionally got in there on defense, mostly when it was like garbage time, or especially in that Giants game at the end of the season when the starters didn't play. But he's a guy who I think has a lot of talent and a lot of potential. I love the way he plays the game because he brings a lot of energy. He's got that dog mentality that Nick Sirianni always talks about, and he's just relentless, and he plays with a lot of physical toughness. I mean, we've seen in the past, he is not afraid to lay a big hit on somebody, and that's valuable. So this season, I don't know what his role could look like. Obviously, you still got Reed Blankenship and C.J. Gardner-Johnson as your two starting safeties. But personally, I would love to see Sidney Brown maybe get a little bit of a bigger role on defense. Again, it's not a given and be really tough to do, but I do think he's a good player, and I'd like to see what he could do with a bigger opportunity. That said, there is a chance that Brown could see some competition added to that safety room depending on what happens in the upcoming NFL draft, especially since it was just revealed that the Birds formally met with the safety at the NFL Combine in Alabama's Malachi Moore. And Moore is kind of somewhat similar to Sidney Brown in a way. Maybe he's a little bit more on the slighter side, a little bit lighter than Sid is, but he's one of those guys that's going to bring the energy. He's a dog, he's relentless, he's tough, and he's still capable of laying a big hit from time to time despite his a little bit smaller frame. And it's funny, I've actually seen people compare him to C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the sense that just like CJGJ, Malachi Moore is an absolute menace out on the football field. You know, he's someone that's always going to be talking trash and bringing the juice. So, you know, maybe CD could take him under his wing in a way if the Eagles do decide to draft him. And then in addition to that, Moore's just a good player, as the projected third-round draft pick has been very good in zone coverage. He's got some versatility to be able to play in multiple different packages and sets and all over the field. He's got very good ball skills and has shown a knack to be able to take the football away, and scouts have praised his football IQ. Now, obviously, he's still got some developing to do in different areas, but that could be said for anybody, so he'll definitely be an interesting name to watch for the Eagles moving forward, as maybe a guy to add some depth at the safety position, or maybe even at slot cornerback with the versatility that he brings. Who knows? That said, it's very important to note that just because the Eagles met with somebody at the Combine, that does not at all mean that they're going to draft them. And what's really important is going to be the top 30 visits, as in recent history, those have been super indicative of what the Eagles decide to do in the draft. I mean, these past two seasons, the Eagles' first 3 picks in in each of those drafts have all been guys that they've held top 30 visits with, so that's the more important thing to pay attention to moving forward. But still, these combine visits are definitely interesting, and they give us little hints as to who the Birds could be looking at. Now, since my last video, the Eagles have formally met with a few more guys in Boston College's offensive tackle Ozzie Trapolo, who stands at a massive 6'7" and is projected to go in the 3rd round, and also they talked to 2nd round defensive tackle out of Texas, Alfred Collins, and Collins is a guy who impressed during drills on Thursday, and he's viewed as a pretty solid run-stuffing defensive tackle prospect that could be ready to contribute right away as a rookie. So again, those are a couple names to watch out for moving forward. However, when it comes to the combine meetings, I personally have found it much more interesting to look at the trends of what positions the Eagles are meeting with rather than the players themselves, because I think it can give us hints about the future of the Eagles roster. For example, most of the Eagles combine visits on the offensive side of the ball have been with tight ends, as the Birds have met with a lot of them both formally and informally, so it seems like they probably will pick one at some point during this NFL draft. So what could that signal? Well, personally, I think maybe it could mean that the Eagles are preparing for the end of Dallas Goedert. I mean, think about it. That would make complete and perfect sense, because if you rewind back to 2018, after the Eagles had won their first Super Bowl, Zach Ertz was 27 years old, about to turn 28, so the Eagles drafted Goedert in the 2nd round. Then those two obviously played together for a few years before Ertz was traded in 2021, and Goedert then took over as the full-time starter. And now, fast forward to 2024, in the present day, Goedert is 30 years old, 3 years older than Zach Ertz was when they drafted him, and he's also been very injury-prone over these past few seasons, and he has just 1 year left on his contract. Now that said, they will likely either extend Goedert to a short-term deal or maybe just restructure the contract to save cap space, but regardless of what they decide to do there, it definitely does make a lot of sense that the Eagles would want to bring a tight end in the draft to just be able to learn and develop behind Goedert before he eventually goes on to replace him whenever that may be. Now, all that said, I do not want to diminish what Goedert has done and how important of a piece he has been for the Eagles offense, as in addition to obviously just being a fantastic receiving weapon, he also provides a lot of value in the run game as a blocker. Plus, he just had a historic playoff run, as his 17 catches were 3rd all-time among tight ends in a playoff run, his 215 yards were 4th, and he also had a touchdown as well. So what I'm saying is, there is definitely reasons to keep Goedert around, maybe even past next year. I mean, personally, I'd probably like to see him stay maybe 2 more years, but even so, the Eagles definitely need to have a replacement plan in place. And as of now, it definitely seems like that's going to come through this draft. But that's not all, as on defense, the Eagles have met with a lot of interior defensive linemen, which I think could be for a number of reasons. I mean, one, it's probably just preparing for the departure of Milton Williams, which looks like all but a given at this point. But 2, it also could have something to do with the uncertainty surrounding Jordan Davis moving forward, as currently, there is no guarantee that Davis will remain in Philly past next season, as he has just 1 year left on his rookie deal. Now that said, the Eagles still do have to decide whether to pick up his 5th-year option of $11 million or not, and there's also a chance that they could decide to sign him to an extension this offseason. However, the Birds simply cannot pay everybody, and as much as I really like Jordan Davis and I think he's very valuable, and I want them to keep him around for the long haul just due to his value as a run-stuffing, block-eating monster in the middle on Philly's defense, there's also a chance that they just let his contract run out after this season. And with several of the guys that the Eagles have met with being players that fill a similar role as JD as a run-stuffing defensive tackle, you have to wonder if the Birds could be using this draft to prepare for Davis's eventual departure. That said, it also could be nothing, and the Eagles could just be interested in adding depth at that position, as we know that Howie is obsessed with linemen, so I don't know, I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this. Do you think I'm reading too much into it, or do you think that the Eagles' combine meetings could actually signal something? But now, moving on, the Eagles also saw some other big news around the NFL yesterday that could wind up affecting their free agency, starting with some news inside the NFC East, as it was reported by Cowboys insider Fish Sports that Dallas is very close to getting a deal done with defensive tackle Osa Odighizuwa that would pay him over $21 million per season. And the reason this is so important, assuming the deal does get done, is because of what it will do for the defensive tackle market ahead of NFL free agency, as all the top guys in the free agent class are going to want around that $21 million annually or more. And that of course includes Eagles soon-to-be free agent defensive tackle Milton Williams, who we already pretty much knew was going to leave to get paid big money somewhere else, but this news only further confirms that in my opinion. So if you haven't already, just get ready to say goodbye to the 2021 third-round pick. However, that's not the only big NFL news from yesterday that could affect the Eagles' free agency, as the Chiefs just franchise-tagged right guard Trey Smith for a value of $23.4 million next season, making him in effect the highest paid guard in football right now. So just like Odighizuwa, that's going to set the market ahead of free agency for the guard position, meaning somebody like Eagles right guard Mekhi Becton could now be worth even more than expected on the open market, especially since now with Smith gone, he's going to be one of the top guys available in the class. So I think for Becton, it's really just going to come down to, does he want to get paid, or does he love Philly that much that he's willing to take a hometown discount to stay here? I mean, let's face it, like, the Eagles simply cannot afford to pay him what these other teams are going to be able to offer him. I mean, that was always the case, but now with this Trey Smith news coming out, that's even more true. But even so, we've seen the reports throughout the offseason saying that the Eagles likely still could get Becton back because this is simply the place where he wants to be. So, I don't know, does he take the money? Does he come back to Philly because he wants to be here? I don't know, it's kind of feeling like a little bit of a toss-up to me. I personally hope he stays, but at the end of the day, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But the roller coaster ride does not stop there, as ahead of free agency, Eagles fans just saw a pretty serious twist play out right before their eyes regarding one of the Birds' top free agents. And of course, I'm talking about star defensive end Josh Sweat, as yesterday, an Instagram account by the name of Eagles Avenue posted this on Instagram saying that Josh Sweat is expected to part ways with the Eagles this offseason, which I think at this point is what all Eagles fans were expecting. However, Sweaty J himself replied to this post as he commented 3 question marks so as to say, I don't know what you're talking about because I never said that and I don't know where you're getting that information from. So of course, naturally, this has only given Eagles fans hope that maybe, possibly, somehow Josh Sweat could return to Philadelphia on some sort of team-friendly deal, but here's how I see it. I mean, Josh Sweat wants to be an Eagle. He wants to stay here. I mean, there's no question about that in my mind. Obviously, he was drafted here in 2018. He's been here his entire career. This is where his roots are. This is where he's had all his success. He's familiar with the defense. He's familiar with his teammates. It's a great situation having just won the Super Bowl. Like, obviously, he's going to want to stay here. However, he also wants to get paid, and that's very clear by the fact that he changed agents to Drew Rosenhaus right before the Super Bowl and also called free agency the biggest moment of his life. So it's just going to come down to what does he want more, because again, as I've said in many videos previously, the Eagles just cannot afford to pay Josh Sweat what he's actually worth on the open market, and there's going to be a bunch of other teams out there that are going to offer him huge money, and the Eagles just can't match it. So it's either does he take a huge hometown discount to stay in Philadelphia, or does he go test the open market and get paid a massive contract. Personally, I think Sweat's going to go with the money. I mean, even if he did take a little hometown discount, that probably wouldn't be enough. Like, he'd have to take a significant pay cut to stay here in Philadelphia because they just can't afford to pay that much money. And again, based on all the reports that we've gotten leading into free agency, it seems like Josh Sweat is going to be headed elsewhere. This little exchange on social media is definitely interesting. It makes you think maybe there could be hope that he takes that big discount and stays, but again, I just don't see that being the most likely thing, as much as this was a big twist. Speaking of big twists, though, we just got another one of those this morning that, if true, makes everything that I just talked about with Josh Sweat completely irrelevant. As just when I thought that the potential of a Myles Garrett trade to Philly was completely dead, the Athletic's Diana Russini gave it new life, as she just said this on her Scoop City podcast.
Here's what some people are saying right now, that Howie's willing to move on from some of these guys because he's looking to make a big swing, and that big swing would be for Myles Garrett. Some of these guys that you think are a sure thing may not be sure things to return to Philly.
I would rather have Myles Garrett than Zack Baun.
Put it past Howie Roseman going after Myles Garrett. No way.
Not.
Continue to build and build and build in the area that got them to the Super Bowl and in the Super Bowl's past, which is just to continue with it.
And Myles Garrett.
Could you imagine that? Wow. Look, but is Cleveland going to move him?
Man, there is a lot to break down there. I mean, this report literally goes against everything that we've heard from the past few days. Like, Howie Roseman literally laid out the Eagles' offseason plans and basically told fans not to expect any flashy or blockbuster moves. And he also said that the Eagles aren't really in position to be giving up major assets and also paying big-time money for a guy in a trade. Plus, Adam Schefter said the other day that it would shock him if Myles Garrett is traded to Philly. But now, again, obviously, we have this new report from Russini saying the exact opposite of that. So, could those previous reports and comments from Howie be the Eagles GM just trying to throw other teams off the scent? I suppose it could be. However, there's a lot of things to consider. I mean, sure, if you can find a way to add Garrett where all the money works out and you can still retain your young core of guys, then I'm all for it. However, if you have to choose between trading Garrett and paying him versus just re-signing Zack Baun, for example, I'm not sure I'm choosing Garrett because the Eagles already have several young stars on the defensive line, plus Baun would be cheaper, and we saw just how vital he was to the Eagles' defensive success this year. And in addition to that, you also have to consider how adding Garrett and paying him might affect the Eagles' ability to pay their young core guys moving into the future, because I am definitely not willing to lose any of them like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell, for example. However, could Garrett maybe take a pay cut if he really wants to join the Eagles? Maybe. So, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot to think about here, and who honestly even knows what to believe at this point? Personally, I'm definitely not fully buying this report from Russini, but at the same time, I'm not quite sure. So I'm curious to know what your guys' thoughts are. But now, getting to some other breaking news from today, the Eagles officially have their new QB coach as they hired Bowling Green head coach Scot Loeffler for the open position. And despite the fact that he has just 1 year of NFL coaching experience, I personally really like this hire because not only does he have 30 years of coaching experience in general, including 19 of those as a QB coach, but he's also a former college teammate of Tom Brady, who he still has a relationship with. And also, his offenses tend to utilize a lot of tempo and pre-snap motion, two things which Jalen Hurts excels at. So I love the experience he brings, I love the outside perspective he brings, and overall, I just think it's a great fit. So again, I definitely love the hire. But man, like this offseason is getting crazy already, and you guys already know that it's only going to continue to get crazier as we get closer to things like free agency and the NFL draft. So if you don't want to miss any Eagles coverage just throughout this entire offseason, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. And also make sure you leave a like down below as well. It takes 2 seconds. It really helps me out a ton, and I would greatly appreciate it. See if we can get to like 600 or 700 likes today. And also leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. Definitely a lot to think about. So again, leave a comment down below. And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can check this one out right here. And with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.